But back to the bridge debt. So we were undercapitalized and we were pursuing bridge debt with our lender that we met with. And the only terms that we were getting were 18 months with no extension. Most people did not want to work with us because we had no business acumen or commercial real estate resume. So it's really hard to get good terms without that. Otherwise, you'd be looking at 3 years with 2 one-year extensions if you had a good resume. So 18 months, no extension, and at 18 months, the note's due.
As an operator, I know other investors are romanticizing multifamily investing, and I'm looking to learn from other investors' mistakes. I know you are too, and you found the right place. Welcome to Myers Methods Presents Multifamily Missteps. Hey everybody, and welcome to Myers Methods Presents Multifamily Missteps. I'm your host, Jerome, and I've got the great opportunity to have Michael Tighe with me today. Michael's out in sunny California. How are you, bud?
Doing well. It's not too sunny today, a little overcast, but hopefully the clouds roll out tomorrow. I don't know.
I thought it never rains in Southern California.
It doesn't rain. You know what? I know growing up in the Midwest, maybe even on the East Coast, when you see clouds, you're like, oh, it's about to rain. And in California, it took me a while to realize after moving here from Cleveland that clouds don't mean rain, it's just fog, basically.
So do me a favor, tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and your background.
So as far as the real estate background goes, well, I currently work as an air traffic controller, have an aviation background as a pilot. I'm a private pilot. And I started investing when I was working at an air traffic control job up in Los Angeles. I started with the house hack and just buying a cash flow asset. But at the time, I didn't know those terms. I had the concept in my head, and I don't know why I knew this. I'd never read a book when I made that transaction. I just knew, and maybe there's some common sense to it too, but I just knew that I wanted a property that if I had to move out, that it would cash flow, that the rents would cover the mortgage. I guess a lot of people don't consider that, and that's actually common in San Diego, that the mortgage is greater than the rents, and people are kind of SOL when they move out. So I just knew that I wanted a property that cash flow or the rents cover the mortgage, and I wanted to Airbnb the 2 bedrooms out into 3 bedrooms. So I had started with that, lived in it for about a year and a half, and then I moved to San Diego for a promotion in my job field as an air traffic controller. And I bought a Airbnb. I wanted to stick with the Airbnb model since that's kind of what I knew. So I turned a 3-bedroom in Los Angeles into 3 individual Airbnbs. I wasn't really advertising it as one entire place because it was more lucrative to do 3 individuals. And then I bought an Airbnb with my VA loan in downtown San Diego, and that just required that I couldn't live I had to live in the property for a year. I couldn't rent it out right away. That's just kind of the parameters of the VA loan. But the benefit is there's no cash down required to acquire that loan. So I got the loan, bought the property, lived in that condo for a year, then turned it into an Airbnb, and then I started renting from then on out. Bought a 4-plex in Cleveland, all the while trying to get more of a yield play, because these Airbnbs, especially the San Diego condo, there's not much meat on the bone, not much cash flow, but I had no money in the property, so it just kind of made sense. And all the money I was using, I just built up when I was working as a government contractor in Afghanistan. You don't really spend much in those jobs. So I was at the Kandahar airport doing air traffic control, and you don't pay taxes. Was able to save up a lot of money, and I just wanted to act on that and use that money in the real estate market once I realized it was the most lucrative avenue. Anyway, so some partners at work or some coworkers asked me what I was doing with real estate. They had no experience in real estate. And I just kind of told them how it worked and at my property's cash flowed. And obviously you have tenants paying down your principal, and they were just kind of astonished and they were really intrigued. So they started getting into it. I recommended some books to them, and they read those books, and they were looking at BRRRRs initially. The buy, rehab, refinance, rent, repeat. Might have said it in the wrong order model.
No, you got it right.
Did I get it right? Okay. I always get those R's confused. There's too many of them.
There's a lot.
So yeah, we started looking at BRRRs. I know like my partner Sean was looking in Louisville, Rich was looking around, I was looking in Cleveland to acquire one. It was just too much work. And my partner Rich, who, I kind of brought him into this reading books. He read some books on apartment investing, and he's like, Mike, he's like, what you're doing with the SFRs, there's no equity. You can't really build any equity on these properties unless you buy below market value. You're kind of hoping for luck as far as equity goes. You can cash flow, but he's like, if we get in this apartment game, look at these formulas. And he just kept texting me, like bugging me with the formulas. Like, Mike, look at if we bought a value add, we could raise rents this much. If it's this kind of market, we bring up the NOI this much. This is how much the valuation increases. And I was just kind of like, whatever, dude. I have, my mind was kind of made up. I wanted to just do SFRs, and small multis, no commercial. But he, was just drilling it in so consistently and so persistently that Sean and I eventually decided to get on board with him. Like, you know what, right? You're right, Rich. Let's partner. Let's meet up for drinks and let's discuss what this looks like for us. So we all read a book together, Multifamily Millions by Dave Lindahl, to kind of set our educational foundation. And we acted on that like immediately. I know a lot of people just keep reading and don't take action. Obviously, taking action is a really important step once you get the knowledge, once you feel comfortable. So we're calling brokers, and as you know, Jerome, like when you're calling a broker for the first time and you have no deals, they're kind of hesitant to work with you because they don't know if you can close on the deal. That's their main concern. We didn't really know what to expect because, when you're a residential buyer looking for a house, you call an agent, they're happy to work with you. They're like, let's make moves, buddy. But in the commercial space, you need kind of a resume, or you need clout on your team. You need someone, you need to partner with someone who has a resume, or you need to prove yourself in some way via business plan and just your net worth. So we kept calling brokers, no luck. They were sending us deals, but they were outside of our parameters, and they were just it was the garbage deals. There wasn't any value to add. And Rich was talking with the broker one day in Indianapolis, this guy Daryl from Marcus and Millichap. And Daryl gave him the usual, sorry, I don't have anything for you, Rich. But he's like, tell me a little bit about yourself. He's like, oh, we're air traffic controllers. And Daryl's like, oh, he knew someone who was an air traffic controller, and that kind of bond or connection led Daryl to say, you know what, Rich, I got something for you. He's like, check your email in in 30 minutes, and I'll send you the deal. So that's where we got the off-market deal. That term that everyone loves to hear, which doesn't always mean it's the best thing, but
usually it's usually overpriced. Especially if it comes from a broker, man. But I think the story is amazing, and I don't want anybody to miss it, right? The building the rapport with the broker is what shifted everything. A lot of people in the marketplace are trying to find a deal. They don't know if they have a deal. They get these leads, and what you get initially is a bunch of leads. None of them actually pencil out to be a deal.
Yeah.
You guys kept chugging along, and going through the process of building rapport and staying consistent with the broker, you're able to get something that penciled. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, it's okay. I mean, you make some great points, and that's not to be overlooked when you're starting out in commercial apartment buying. Yeah, so Rich made that bond, like I said, with the broker. He sent us a deal, this off-market deal. And this one, unlike most the deals we saw, maybe 40 or 50, wasn't total garbage. I mean, we looked, and we kind of had an arbitrary method back then. As soon as we got a deal, we used two software platforms. We would look at Neighborhood Scout and see what the neighborhood was like. We kind of had medium household income floors that we were looking at. So we could completely just send it back if it wasn't, within those parameters, and even the crime rates and everything like that, and market fundamentals. So we looked at the market fundamentals, and then we went to rentometer.com, which, we use other platforms now, but that's kind of how we started. And we compared the rent roll with what market rents were. And that's how we determined, okay, are the market fundamentals there? And does this have value add potential? And this one looked like it had huge potential because there were 1 and 2 bedrooms that were $200 to $300 below market rents. But with that came a seller who put no money into anything. So working with this seller, the initial problem we had was her father owned it and he passed away. So there was a brother and a sister fighting over the property, and there were probate issues. So I don't know if we had a signed contract, but we had an agreement in principle, an LOI maybe. And so we were waiting on the probate the whole time, like the court results, and the broker just kind of kept us on standby. And, wanted to get your first deal under the belt. We're getting so anxious, like, man, do we just move on from this deal and start looking for others? So we're just kind of calling brokers on the side. We're occasionally, not as frequently. We're getting some deals, but nothing matches up to the value add potential of this one. So we're just kind of waiting it out. And eventually Daryl gave us the go. He's like, hey, probate court gave her the green light to sell it to you guys. So, but back to the bridge debt. So we were undercapitalized and we were pursuing bridge debt with our lender that we met with. And the only terms that we were getting were 18 months with no extension. Most people did not want to work with us because we had no business acumen or commercial real estate resume. So it's really hard to get good terms without that. Otherwise, you'd be looking at 3 years with 2 one-year extensions if you had a good resume. So 18 months, no extension, and at 18 months, the note's due. You have to execute on your business plan, refinance out, whatever you need to do. So we realized it wasn't going to be obtainable. And, and I mentioned on another one of your podcasts that we were talking to you. Coincidentally, it's funny that I'm on your show right now discussing this, but Jerome was on our show, and just kind of a little side talk before the show, we brought up some of the numbers. And, Jerome kind of brought up the notion that some of these banks almost want you to fail just so they can collect the asset. It's almost more lucrative for them than you actually following through on your business plan. And I was already apprehensive on following through with bridge debt, but that was my oh hell no moment. And we followed through with the podcast. I didn't have time to talk to my partners, but it was in the back of my mind as we're interviewing Jerome. As soon as this podcast is over, I'm telling the guys that I'm backing out. I'm sorry, we didn't have an LLC agreement signed. We need to find other lending options. So we backed out of the bridge debt, thankfully, and especially with this current market climate, this would have slowed things down even more. And with bridge debt, we have 18 months to execute. You don't have till the 18th month. They want you to start refinancing. They got to start the paperwork a couple months out. So now you're looking at 13 months. Oh, and by the way, they don't just give you, so they were going to give us $500,000 to $600,000 for renovation money. They don't just give you a check for $600,000 and say, go to work. They'll give you like $20,000, $25,000, $50,000 chunks. They got to go out, approve the work, and then they give you the money. And then you can start the next piece of the work. So it's going to slow everything down. So executing on that in hindsight, there is a small chance that it would have worked, but I didn't like our odds. And with money on the line like that, why risk it when you don't have to, right? And so we pivoted to conventional lending, and we had to raise more money. So the 3 of us, my 2 partners and I, Rich and Sean, we brought 3 others on board who kind of joined us in a joint venture capacity. So they weren't limited partners, they were active members on the LLC, but they just kind of wanted to be passive. And we were fine with that. It was a win-win for both. They get the experience as JVs, and we get the experience, or we get the money from them to closing this deal, and they get the returns. We split it just based on equity percentages. So we closed on the property, got the conventional lending. It's a 5-year note, amortized over 25 years. And that was late December, we closed in it. And now, we're following through with the renovations, kind of getting aggressive with the reposition, getting rents up. And even in this current climate, we're generating enough leads off the Facebook marketplace and everything that we're getting a lot of applications this week, and units are being filled. And everything's going according to plan, and things are actually going better than planned. There's weird aspects you never underwrite for, such as tenants who owe the seller money, and now they're paying us. It's money that wasn't even owed to us. One guy, he owed like $2,000. He lost his job, or I don't know his full story. We inherited him, and he said, he's like, I'll pay back. The property manager was hitting him up for the debts that were rolled over, and he's going to pay back with his tax return. And I was like, okay, we didn't underwrite for money that we didn't even really earn from last year, but if he wants to balance his ledger, then we'll take it and keep him. And he seems like a promising tenant. We're full speed ahead with the reposition now.
So tell me, we talked a little bit earlier. You mentioned you weren't using Facebook Marketplace before to advertise the units. And you guys, what were you guys doing before? And how are you keeping the property manager honest, considering you're 3,000, 4,000 miles away?
Yeah, and I know you have a good story about working with your first property manager in dishonesty, right? And I'm sure a lot of your listeners have heard you talk about it. So our property manager, as far as keeping them honest with renovation costs?
renovation costs, even getting the units rented up. I mean, you said you guys moved to Facebook, but I mean, who made that push to make the adjustment?
Okay, that's a good question. So yeah, that's hard, and it's a 32 unit, so there's no on-site leasing staff. Um, so with that, we run into a hurdle. You get a lead. Let's say I get a lead on the marketplace, and I send them to the phone number to call to schedule a showing. The property manager gets a voicemail. They wake up, they have the voicemail. They have to get back when they have free time, and then they have to contact that person and set up the showing, and their schedules both have to work out. There's so many moving parts. The odds of the conversion rate to a showing was too low. So we came up with something better. And the property manager initiated this actually using their tenant turner software. They were able to make it completely automated. So when we get these leads on the marketplace, we're actually controlling the marketplace. We're responding because we realize it's a lot of work, and like no property manager is going to dedicate this much time to responding. They just don't care enough. I mean, that's just how I see it. We're getting 40 messages a day. I know, and to be fair to property managers, they're busy. They're not just twiddling their thumbs. A good one is working all day. So they're not really thinking about, oh, let me see who messaged Mike's apartment all the time. Where we're like, as soon as someone responds, we're like, hey, what's going on? What can we do to help you? Great customer service because we care. Because when you're the owner, you care the most, right? So we send them to this number, and it's automated. It gives them the lockbox code. So all the units have lockboxes on them. Now, obviously, there's a risk with what if someone steals the fridge or something, does something crazy in the unit. So you do run that risk, but there's the added convenience of your conversion rate of lead to showing. I don't have the numbers, but I'm assuming it's almost 100% then. So it's so easy that they text this number, they get a code, they get the address. I think they first have to send a photo ID, a picture of their photo ID to the software, and then it sends them that. They go to the unit, and they just have to text when they leave. And it kind of eliminated the whole chain of call the PM, wait for the PM to call back, hope our schedules align. Once we started doing that, our showings went up and our applications went up. So that's how we kept that PM honest with showings, and they were almost kind of keeping themselves honest. And then with renovations, they came in a little high. They were around 12,000 a turn, which have you ever done one that much, or you kind of go lower than that? Yeah. So these units were, I haven't mentioned this yet, but we were basically buying bricks and land. All the CapEx items needed to be replaced. All the units. It was 1960s vintage, and the seller touched nothing except the roof, as I think I said previously. So we had to put a lot in the units, and we kept them honest by getting other bids. We had this contractor who lived in Louisville and was willing to drive up and stay for the week just to get the job. So he got the bids down to 8,500, and we sent our PM the bids and said, "This is why we're not going with you. This is what they need to look like." And what's interesting is, so he did I think he did the first 4 turns, and then he actually asked for a break. He's like, you guys mind if I take a week or 2 off? And we want to keep it going. So we asked the PM to give a quote for the next turn, and they coincidentally matched the bid. So, magically their numbers changed, their math changed, and now their bids were also 8,600. And I think they were actually cheaper than him in some certain areas. They were really cheap on flooring. I think because they maybe buy mass supplies, and they had a way that they were cheaper than him on flooring. So their flooring number came up to his, but they also came down in everything else.
Wow.
Which is fine with us, if they want to make a little extra money there, but as long as they come down to that total number. So that's kind of how we kept them honest initially. Is I feel like the property manager was kind of testing you, like, okay, how much money can we make off these guys on turns? How much room is there to make some extra money? And I'm sure you
would have happened if you guys would have went with the bridge debt with the increased expense and not having that flexibility to make the transition.
Yeah. And I didn't mention this, but when you go with bridge debt, the lender requires you have to tell them who your contractor is, and you are required to work with that contractor because they underwrite for that contractor. So if that contractor has all the leverage on you to rip you off, because they know, hey, this guy has no one else. He can't get competing bids. We can charge him. Let's ring these numbers up 20-30%.
What's up, guys? It's your host, Jerome. I just want to let you know we launched Myers Methods in the fall of 2019 with the ambition to inspire a new breed of multifamily investor. If you are interested in getting into multifamily or scaling your current business, hop over to our website at myersmethods.com to grab your free 4-step guide on how to get the ball rolling in multifamily. Now let's get back to the episode.
Yeah, and it's kind of a weird game negotiating because I feel like when you talk him down too much, I mean, you want the guy to make enough money where he enjoys working for you. Because every time you talk him down, you're saying, I want myself to have more money and you to have less. That's what I feel like you're saying. So there's the game of, okay, give me a fair number, but also don't cheat yourself, which usually isn't a problem with contractors. But the guy we got from Louisville, he was working so hard for us that he actually wanted to stop working. He's like, man, it's not worth it. He's like, I think he was getting burnt out, and he's like, I usually make X per week, and I'm making 50% of that, because he wanted to come in so low on the bids, and he felt pressured because we knew him. So there's that aspect of it, that you want them to get a fair wage where they enjoy working for you and want to do the work too.
Yeah, I think there's a balance, and as long as
Yeah.
you make it work, there's no reason to beat somebody up and be greedy. The other thing I wanted to talk about is you said you guys got into a mentorship deal, and it's going to help you scale your business. And so I think a lot of people eventually run out of money with just friends and family, and then they've got to go to that next step. And so you guys have gotten there already. So do me a favor and dive into that and what your strategy is around that.
Yeah, I mean, we did it for the very reason that you just said. Like, we want to be financially free, and we acquired our first asset, but we also exhausted all of our capital. So the next avenue, the next progression in this field typically is do syndications and raise money. So we wanted someone on our team that had experience to bring clout to the team. So when we're raising money, we can leverage their experience and their resume. So we started interviewing mentors, all the big programs that you might see on websites, and all the big guys from podcasts and things like that. And a lot of them weren't tailored to what we wanted. We had certain things we were looking for, and we wanted to work directly with the syndicator. So we found the mentor we liked when our podcast was airing, it's still airing, but after interviewing a certain guest, we asked him if he knew anyone who would be a mentor for us. And he said, oh, well, my brother and I are looking to do it. And these guys had an outstanding resume. They just didn't have, exposure that other people had. They didn't really care about writing books or getting their name out there via social media or podcasts. They just were doing deals. So we were excited to work with them, and we knew we'd be working directly with them. And we were kind of like, we were their proteges, essentially. I think they're going to take pride in making us successful. And that's kind of what we wanted, that kind of relationship, rather than working with a university that had 5,000 students, 1,000 students, and you're kind of just another name. You don't really even know the people that run the program. So that's what we were looking for personally, to each their own, because I know these bigger programs provide a lot of value. I've met guys that started from nothing. We already had a deal under our belt, so we had a little bit of knowledge, right? We weren't starting from just a single family rental. So these guys that do start from the single family space and then just want to jump in, these programs can be appropriate, and they're great for mentoring too, because you meet a lot of people in that big network that you can raise money from, I know. But yeah, that's kind of why we went that route.
That makes a lot of sense. The one thing I haven't been able to piece together, how did you guys get your first loan? Who's the experienced partner?
So we didn't have an experienced partner. We just sold our business plan to the Bank of the West in Indianapolis. And yeah, they bought on. Like, we didn't have, well, one of the investors does have 300 units. So, I misspoke there.
Minor detail.
Yeah. Hold on. Let's go back here. Maybe that was it. Yeah, I completely overlooked him because he's kind of silent and everything, but his resume might have been the reason. They didn't really say that they were looking for an experienced resume. They were underwriting. What's interesting is they said, we're not underwriting the individuals, we're underwriting the property. So it's not like a residential loan where it's like, hey, what's your credit? What's your debt to income? They want to see, hey, is this property really going to perform as you guys say?
Is it recourse debt?
It is recourse debt. Yeah. It's not Fannie Freddie yet.
You signed a personal guarantee?
Did I sign a personal guarantee?
Yeah.
What's recourse? So how does that work? Our LLC had to sign the guarantee, right?
No, if you go back and look through your loan docs, you'll see that there is one page that's a personal guarantee for everybody that owns probably more than 20%, if not everybody.
Okay.
So yeah, it's really interesting how that kind of slips through. Are you the manager of the LLC or somebody else?
So it was a JV. We are all equally managers. Our vote counts based on our equity percentages. So based on how much money we put in.
But there
Oh, go
should
ahead.
be at least one person that's the actual person that can actually sign for the LLC.
You know what, that's interesting. We don't have one chief manager. I don't think, according to our LLC agreement, it's all six of us, which kind
Really?
of makes things strange. Having an even number too, but it's based on equity percentages, so someone's vote counts more than another's.
Yeah. That's really cool though. That's awesome. But it's great that somebody had 300 units.
Yeah, yeah.
Lift your mind.
Small, yeah. Oops, forgot a guy has 300 units. Small detail, right?
So, Michael, give me some words of wisdoms for the listeners. They're getting into the space and they're either doing their first deal or scaling to their next. What would you want them to know?
I would think go big. I know it's hard for me to answer that question, and what I base my response off of is what just people that come to our meetup in San Diego always say. There's just a lot of fear and a lot of limiting beliefs. So everyone, I think, and maybe you experience this too. They come up to you like, "Hey, Mike, I'm really excited. I want to buy this single family rental in San Diego." And I'm like, "Why do you want to buy a single family, man? It's not even a cash flow in San Diego." And they, at first they feel like a little challenged and they almost feel like a little insulted, but I'm trying to help them. I'm trying to get them down the right path of thinking where it's okay to buy outside your market and it's okay to go bigger. And they're like, well, and they have a lot of these guys have a lot of money, because to buy a single family in San Diego, they have enough capital to buy an apartment in the Midwest. And because they tell me what they're working with, and I was like, dude, you need to partner with so-and-so over there. They're trying to do the same thing. They have a similar amount of money as you. Read this book, partner, and buy apartments in the Midwest, and your return is going to be exponential compared to what that single family you're buying that's negative cash flow every month, just to say you have a rental property. So I think there's that limiting belief of, I don't want to invest outside of my market. I'm not comfortable. You don't need to see the property. I mean, it's good to see it eventually, but you can write a deal without seeing the property or write an offer. And even if you do inspect the property, let's say, okay, you buy an apartment in San Diego and you're walking through it. Are you an inspector? Do you know what to look for? I don't know what to look for. I can check out the neighborhood and get a feel for what the neighborhood's like, but I can't tell you if the roof's good or if the foundation's good. That's what we pay those guys to do. They're the professionals. So I would say investing outside your market, go big, and I don't know. Do you encounter those kind of similar beliefs when you talk to people that are new?
Yeah, but I struggle, right? And you talked about the way that you approach your multifamily mentorship. And I struggle with the guys that say, hey, you own a single family home. Now let's go buy a $10 million complex and you're going to be the lead on that. I don't think
Mm-hmm.
that's realistic. I think that's jumping into the ocean and trying to hunt Moby Dick.
Great point. Yeah, yeah.
You're going to be just like Captain Ahab. Instead, go tuna fishing, go dolphin fishing, go buy something that's 500,000 to 1.5, maybe a little bit bigger depending on your network. But go buy a deal in that range, get it closed, get the experience, and then you can be your own experience partner, right? Like those are the things that we teach at Myers Methods, and we want people to understand, especially when they're getting into the game, because that experience, learning there, doesn't bankrupt you. You go mess up on a 5, 6, 10, 15, $20 million deal, that gets you in trouble really quick. And there's not a whole lot of way to get out of that. I think the other thing that bothers me the most about education overall is, we got these 5 or 6 groups around the country that are all chasing the same deal. And there's only so many of those deals, right?
Especially in Texas, there's
You're getting 18 offers on a complex. Money's hard the first day. There's a whole lot. If there's, I don't know, 10, 200 unit complexes in the city that you're in, there's probably 120 unit complexes spread around the city that you can go learn with. And so I encourage people to go do those smaller deals, but bigger than the single family. And so
yes.
this tunas and dolphins is what I want people to go catch. You do that, you get comfortable with that, you get a drum, you get your team together, because it's great to look at somebody's website and say, oh, well, they can do this. But once you start working with them, then you really understand what they can and can't do, because every property manager has their own strengths and weaknesses. And it's just like anybody else you add to your team. And so, that's where I'm at on it. And that's what we try to help people do, is get into those deals, get some experience box checked. And, we give them the knowledge through the education program. They know the difference between leads and deals, even though they have the same letters. And so with the leads and deals, then they go do what you talked about, right? They go through, they build rapport with brokers, they maybe do some direct mail to owners, they get their deal flow up, and then they find something. Then they partner, get the experience box checked. And then from there, the capital is the last thing to close the deal and get this thing going. So yeah, man, we see the same thing, but I don't think it's realistic what some people are saying. And I think people get some really rude awakenings when they go into the big programs and think they're just going to go grab a big deal. I've only heard of one success story so far where people actually got in and did the deal they thought they were going to deal up front. What I don't know is what happened to the equity on the back end of that.
Yeah. We had, and this shows that age doesn't really matter either. There's a guy on our podcast, Kyle Marquette, only 21 years old, and he bought a 104 unit. He went through, he had a mentor for it. Obviously, he just didn't, like you said, act on his own.
That's the show. That's the only success story that I know.
You know what I'm talking about? Okay.
That's the only success story I know of, but I don't know how they chopped up the equity on the back end. And so, yeah, he has the experience box checked, but how much does he really own, and was it worth it? Or did the mentor just come in and take everything out of it, which happens?
I think the mentor probably has most of the general partnership, but I would say he doesn't regret that decision. I think he went big, and maybe it's a learning lesson, but I also think there's something to be said for what you said, just partnering and just what's wrong with buying a 10 unit?
Absolutely nothing. You're in the space, and it's the hardest deal you're going to do, right? Because the bigger the deals, the easier it gets, but actually cutting your teeth and understanding the intricacies of it and being able to point to that success and building your credibility. At the end of the day, when people walk in, you can actually talk about that story and what you did, just like you guys with the 32 unit. Like, you're going to be able to tell that story and all the lessons that came with it. So, kudos to you guys for sure.
And I'm sure a lot of people just want to know, like, when things go wrong, how do you respond? How committed are you guys? Are you guys just going to flop when things go wrong? So I think, just like you said, that let's say two people partner in your neighborhood and want to buy a 10 unit with your help, and they experience some trials and tribulations, but they overcome them, that's only going to make them better. And if they do want to eventually raise money, that's part of their story. That's part of their brand and name.
It is. And the stories matter the most when you're getting to know folks that you're bringing to the deals. And so the last question is, if people want to get in touch with you, Michael, how do they?
So we have a Instagram page, the Multifamily Takeoff. We brand the Takeoff in there because of our aviation background as pilots and air traffic controllers. And then my email is mike@themultifamilytakeoff.com.
Thanks, Mike. I really appreciate you. Hey, guys, made it to the end. The pack is with you. Please go out there and take down some deals and be good corporate citizens. We'll talk to you guys soon. You made it to this juncture, so you really love what we shared on this episode of Myers Methods Presents Multifamily Missteps. Do us a favor. Give us a 5-star rating. Give us a review. And share this with somebody who's interested in multifamily investing. Until the next time, the pack is with you.